Hey, USC Annenberg Media. Today we have our new USG president and vice president, Austin Dunn and Morgan Monahan. Thank you guys for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this incident that happened on campus today first. There was this vendor who was selling t-shirts that had swastikas on it, and a lot of students came by, and I think they called campus security too. Mm-hmm. So my question is, I also heard about you getting involved in some way. So A, how did you hear about it? And B, how did you get involved in the incident?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that's kind of a blessing for Morgan and I is that we do have friends across different communities at campus. So we did each had our own group of friends. I think I had 4 or 5 people, and Morgan had a similar amount that reached out to her in regards to the incident. So the first thing that I did actually was I made our professional staff aware of it. I realized this was an adult that is a vendor I wasn't sure whether they were through the university or not, and so the first thing I did was make our staff aware of it to they could take their own measures, because I could kind of already sense that there was something that could arise from the situation. And then after that, I took it upon myself to actually go to Trojan Event Services, who is in charge of all of the vendors that come on campus. And Valerie is the person that I actually met with and just discussed with her about the situation that had happened. I showed her a picture that was on social media already, and she was obviously fairly alarmed. And then I asked her if that vendor was approved, and she gave me the name of the one vendor that was approved, and we weren't sure if that was the vendor because I had not gone down there yet. And so then right after that, I went down to Truesdale and right in front of VKC where the incident was occurring, and I just spoke with the person who was in charge of the business and asked if he was an approved vendor, and he said yes, he had paperwork to prove it, and he was kind of already riled up a little bit. I walked into him in a verbal altercation with some students, and so the first thing I tried to do was just calm the students down and just let them know that this was something that was important to us and something that we were focused on, and I just kind of kept composure, asked the man the question of whether or not he was approved. He said he was. And then thereafter, there was a representative that came from Trojan Event Services, as well as some administrative staff, and then DPS was there as well. And obviously it was fairly controversial overall, but just making students realize that hate speech is not something we stand for, and anytime that there's a student that feels unsafe on campus, it's something that we care about. So Morgan and I got down there pretty quickly to kind of respond in that way.
Gotcha. So jumping off that example,
of course.
I know that there's been a lot of other types of these sorts of situations at other college campuses too. Some people would say that this is free speech, and a lot of people would say that it's hate speech. How do you sort of view these types of situations, and what do you plan on doing if something like this happens again?
What do you want to say?
I think there's a very fine line between free speech and hate speech, and we just don't want any student to ever feel unsafe. And I think that's when you have to step in, is when students are feeling unsafe on campus.
Yeah, I think it's really not necessarily saying that either the two of us are the people that kind of determine where that line is. But our focus is about making every Trojan feel included and safe on this campus, right? And so anytime that that's not happening is one that we feel the need to step in and kind of just voice on behalf of students. And I was thanked by the people who were there, and so was Morgan, for coming down and supporting them in that way. And oftentimes, we may not be the people that are in charge, or may not be the people that can change the outcome of a decision. It was not within our power to walk down to this vendor and dismiss him from our campus, even if that was what we would have wanted to do. It wasn't something we could do. And so knowing our realm is what's most important, and then figuring out how we can support students comes second. And oftentimes just standing in solidarity with different communities on campuses might be the most we can do, and that's what we will do moving forward.
So I know for me, I don't even know what the process is for vendors to actually get, verified for, doing what they do, their business on campus, but can you sort of explain, do you understand?
Yeah, so that's funny that you mentioned that, because that's something that we spoke about today, but neither do we. And the reason why that is because student government has nothing to do with Trojan Event Services, and there isn't really crossover. But what student government does is advocate on behalf of the entire student body. And so after an incident like today, that now becomes a student issue, right? So Morgan and I's plan is to kind of open up this dialogue with Trojan Event Services about the process of how these vendors are vetted, and figure out how we can improve and avoid situations like this again moving forward.
Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit now. I know that there's been, your campaign was under heavy scrutiny during the campaign. There were a lot of different things going on, but one of the things that popped up was about nepotism in USG. And I'm just wondering how you hope to tackle that issue when it comes to people that you appoint in your administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, we've gotten this question quite a few times. It's the same thing that it's been from the beginning. It's the same answer we've had from the beginning. the first thing that we look for and that we consider in regards to applications is experience. And whether that's inside of the organization, outside of the organization, just experience doing work that that particular position coincides with. And then passion. And I mean, that can kind of be depicted through an interview. And then interest in a particular position. I mean, it's kind of the same way that we go through our interview process as a whole. With that being said, I mean, it's a really tough battle for us to fight already. Part of our biggest support came from members of the organization, and so that's not something we could just rid ourselves of. But with that being said, what Morgan and I's number one priority is creating the best student government possible, and that does in no way mean having as many of our friends in it as possible. But really figuring out what group of leaders, what group of 120 students or whatever that final number will be can best represent every Trojan on this campus. And I can guarantee you that that's not going to come from our friend groups.
Got it. All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. And yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you guys so much.